Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Simon Nazir and welcome to Knowledge Realm. So students, in the previous lecture we covered new liberalism. Today we're going to cover a very simple and interesting topic, that is new debate. So let's get started. New debate is the third great debate of IR. It emerged in 1970s. It was a debate between the modern version of realism, that is new realism, and modern version of liberalism, that is new liberalism. Students, new liberalism new liberal scholars, they presented their points, and new realist scholars, they presented their points. New liberals, basically, they presented a framework to resolve international political conflicts peacefully, and scholars like Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye, these two scholars were the main proponents of neoliberalism in this debate. They published a book named Power and Interdependence. In this book, they argued that how interdependence can promote peaceful cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution, and this interdependence can prevent states from behaving aggressively in the international arena. Then students, in 1970s, the world witnessed a severe and prolonged economic crisis. This economic crisis encouraged the realist scholars to revive the belief of people in realism. Realist scholars like Kenneth Waltz, they came to the front and they presented a new version of realism that was based on systemic approach, okay? And this new version of realism was called New Realism. Main proponent of New Realism was Kenneth Waltz. He published his book, that is Theory of International Politics, in 1979. And then these two bodies of scholarship, they got engaged in a debate that is called New Debate, the third great debate of IR. Now here are some points of New Debate. These are some features of international system, and on these features, new realist scholars, they presented their point, and new liberal scholars, they presented their point. Let's study them one by one. First of all, international system. Students, about international system, new realist scholars believe that this is anarchic, and this is the similarity between new realist scholars and new liberal scholars. Both these bodies, they believe that yes, international system is anarchic. New liberals, they changed their stance here. Classical liberal scholars, they did not talk about anarchy a lot, but new liberal scholars, they agree with new realist scholars and they say yes, you are right, the international system is indeed anarchic. Then about state behavior, new realist scholars believe that states behave aggressively because there is anarchy in the world. States do not trust each other and they behave aggressively. They wage war on each other, and they cause harm to each other because there is anarchy. On the other hand, new liberal scholars believe that indeed there is anarchy, but even in that anarchy, states can behave in a cooperative manner, and states can be helpful with each other. Then, about national interests, new realist scholars believe that states are interested only in power and strategic security. On the other hand, new liberal scholars, they believe that no, states are not interested only in power and strategic security. They are interested in economic prosperity and welfare of people, because only when there is economic prosperity can people live their life and in peace. Then there comes international cooperation. New realist scholars, they believe that international cooperation is impossible because there is anarchy and mistrust. States do not believe in each other. They do not trust each other. They believe that every other state wants to cause harm to a state, so therefore they would not cooperate with each other. There is mistrust, right? Whereas new liberal scholars, they believe that international cooperation is indeed possible even in anarchy because people are peaceful, and if we implement democratic principles, if we allow people to choose for war, to choose between war and peace, they would always go for peace because prosperity can occur only when there is peace. And people are peaceful, people want economic prosperity and not war and disturbance of peace. Then about interdependence, new realist scholars believe that interdependence is not possible because states always seek relative gain and they believe in zero-sum gain. A state would never want any other state to gain more than itself. A state is always interested in relative gain. For example, let's say that there is a trade agreement between two states. State A would never want to compromise on its interest, and state B would also never want to compromise on its interest. State A would always want to gain more than state B. A state A would try to compare its gain with with the gain of a state B. So when state A sees that my gain is lesser than state B, state A would never cooperate, and there would never be interdependence, because both these states, state A and state B, they are seeing their gains relatively, and this is a zero sum game. This is the belief of new realist scholars. Take the example of the trade tariff war of Trump. Why Trump imposed tariff on its friends as well as foes? Because Trump believes that all the other states, all the Europe, Asia, and South Asia, these states are taking benefit of America, and America is facing a trade deficit, right? So Donald Trump, he is seeing he's seeing the gain of the USA relatively, right? So this is the belief of new realist scholars. However, new liberal scholars, they believe that economic interdependence can help promote peaceful cooperation, because states go for absolute gain and win-win situation and not for the relative gain. For example, Pakistan sees its benefit in CPEC. So Pakistan would cooperate with China. Pakistan would not see that, oh, okay, China is gaining more than Pakistan is gaining, then I would not cooperate with China. No, Pakistan would not think like that. Pakistan would see that in CPEC there is benefit of both the countries, China and Pakistan, both are gaining benefit from this project. So it doesn't matter which state is gaining more. The states are interested only in their own gain. They seek absolute gain. So this is the belief of new liberal scholars. Then there comes the point of international institutions. New realist scholars, they believe that international institutions do not make any difference in the world. They are always under the influence of powerful states, and they cannot supersede states. However, new liberal scholars, they believe that international institutions can indeed promote cooperation among states by eliminating mistrust and ensuring transparency and rule of law. Now, I would explain all these points one by one, and I would show some examples, real life examples also, to help students understand these points and apply these points on the international relations in the real manner. Both the bodies believe that international system is anarchic. Now, how the states behave in this anarchic international system? New realist believes that the states behave aggressively because of anarchy. Take the example of Russia-Ukraine war. Why Russia is behaving aggressively? Now here, understand the stance of John Mearsheimer on this Russia-Ukraine war. John Mearsheimer, while analyzing this Russia-Ukraine war, he said that my key point is that the United States pushed forward policies towards Ukraine that Putin and his colleagues see as existential threat to their country. Specifically, I'm talking about America's obsession with bringing Ukraine into NATO and making it a Western bulwark on Russia's border. Now, students, why Russia waged war on Ukraine? Russia waged war on Ukraine because Russia was seeing that America is pushing for Ukraine joining the NATO. Now, Russia knows that there is anarchy, there is mistrust between Russia and the USA, and if in the future the USA deploys its troop in Ukraine that is right across the border of Russia, Russia sees it as an existential threat to its security. So because of this anarchy, because of this mistrust, and because of this threat to the survival of Russia, Russia waged war on Ukraine. And today this is the demand of Russia. Russia wants Ukraine to withdraw from this aspiration of joining NATO. So because of this anarchy and mistrust, Russia waged war on Ukraine and Russia behaved aggressively. This is how the new realist scholar like John Mearsheimer analyze the Russia-Ukraine war, and they believe that states always behave aggressively due to anarchy. Now, how new liberals see state behavior? New liberals believe that there can be cooperation and there can be helpful behavior to mitigate anarchy. States, it is not necessary that states would always behave aggressively. Take the example of China and Russia increasing cooperation and uplifting global south. Both these countries, China and Russia, they are cooperating with each other and they are making efforts to cause the uplift of global south. Xi Jinping said on 16th summit of BRICS that the common march of the global south towards modernity is a major event in world history. Now, all this global south is increasing cooperation. How they are doing it? Is there any super-sovereign authority in the world over this global south? No, there is no super-sovereign authority. There is indeed anarchy, but still they are cooperating. Why? Because they are interested in economic prosperity. So this is how new liberals believe that state behavior is not always aggressive. It is not aggressive. They can cooperate with each other also, and they can help each other in mitigating this anarchy and moving towards economic prosperity in the international arena. Now, international cooperation. New realist scholars believe that international cooperation is not possible because strategic security always takes precedence over economic security. Take the example of Pakistan-India May 2025 war. In May 2025, Pakistan-India fought a multi-domain war because of the Pahalgam terrorist attack. And today, both these countries are increasing their strategic power. They're not interested in any kind of economic interdependence. They severed all the economic relations, all the political relations. India also suspended the Indus Water Treaty. And now they are increasing their military power. India is developing its nuclear weapons. India is increasing its power. The Agni 5, they have enhanced the program of Agni 5 ballistic missile. Pakistan is investing a lot of money in its defense allocation. Pakistan is investing in enhancing the power of its ballistic missile like Shaheen, Wari, and Nasser missile. So all this is going on because right now the leaders of Pakistan and India as well, they have taken the approach of new realist scholars in their bilateral relations. However, new liberal scholars, they believe that interdependence, or should I say economic interdependence, is conducive for promoting peace and preventing states from behaving aggressively. Take the example of US and China trade war. US and China, they got engaged in a trade war in 2025 and earlier in 2022 also. Now, both these countries are interdependent on each other. I would say that US is more dependent on China than China is on the USA. So this interdependence, it actually it averted a very adverse kind of trade war that could have caused an economic meltdown at the global level and could have caused severe economic loss to the poor countries and the developing countries. So it was their economic interdependence that prevented this kind of war from worsening. Trump withdrew from trade tariff war due to excessive interdependence of China and the US on each other. There's another example, Pakistan and China. They are promoting peaceful relations due to interdependence in BRI and CPEC. Right now, China and Pakistan, they both are excessively interdependent on each other because of this CPEC. China gains a lot of benefit from CPEC, and Pakistan is also interested in CPEC because CPEC is important for Pakistan. CPEC can help Pakistan uh, CPEC can help Pakistan resolve its energy crisis, increase employment, reduce poverty, and all of these benefits. Pakistan can reap all these benefits from this CPEC, this project. So both these countries are engaged in economic interdependence and they are interdependent on each other. So they would not behave aggressively. So international cooperation is indeed beneficial in the international arena. This is the belief of new liberals scholars. Now, if we talk about national interest, new realist scholars believe that strategic security and power maximization. This is the only national interest of states. Take the example of US expanding influence of NATO in Eastern Europe to curb Russia and increase its power. Why USA is expanding the membership of NATO in Eastern Europe? Here, the US right now wants NATO expansion till here, right across the border of Russia. Why it wants something like this to happen? Because it wants to maximize its power in Eastern Europe, in all this area, so that it could curb the rise of Russia and it could keep a check on Russia, and it could gain a leverage in Eastern Europe, a strategic leverage, right? So what is the interest of US right now? The interest is very explicitly strategic security. It wants to increase its strategic power, and it wants Ukraine to join NATO only because it wants its strategic power here in Eastern Europe. Another example, US-India strategic partnership to curb the rise of China. So what are the national interests of states? According to new realist scholars, it is strategic security and power maximization. On the other hand, new liberals, they believe that people prefer economic prosperity, human rights protection, and social peace. Take the example of China investing in Africa and South Asia, economic aid from developed world to the developing world. And another very interesting example, South Africa filing lawsuit against Israel in International Court of Justice under 1948 Genocide Convention. Students, South Africa filed a lawsuit against Israel, and it filed this lawsuit alleging Israel of committing a genocide in Gaza. Why South Africa did this? Because it wants to increase its power? Because it wants strategic security? No. It did this because it believes in human rights protection, and to it wants the world to hold all these evil powers accountable for committing a genocide in Gaza. There was no concept of strategic security or power maximization. No, only the concept of human rights protection. So South African leaders right now, they are thinking with the approach of new liberals scholars, right? So this is how new realist scholars, they analyze the national interest, and new liberals scholars, their approach regarding national interest is quite different. Now let's see what are the solutions presented by new realists and new liberals to resolve the international political conflicts. Students, new realist scholars, they take a very pessimist approach, and they say that power maximization and nuclear deterrence is the only way to ensure survival and peace in the world. I have mentioned a quote of Dwight D. Eisenhower that is related to nuclear deterrence. Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was the president of the USA, and his policy was quite realist policy. He says that only when arms are sufficient beyond doubt can we be certain without doubt that they would never be deployed. Now here he's talking about nuclear deterrence. He's saying that only when we acquire many as many as possible nuclear weapons can we be certain that they would never be deployed, because the world knows that a state if a state launches nuclear weapon on another state, the world would be vanished in a second, right? And students, if we analyze today's situation, we would realize that right now we are seeing a revival of new realism. Right now, the world's nuclear armed state possess a combined total of over 12,400 nuclear warheads, and this is data from the Arms Control Association, and this is a data of 2025, right? Right now, Russia possesses 5,500 nuclear weapons, US possesses 5,225, and we have seen many heated military conflicts in 2025. 2025 was a year of wars and military confrontation. There were tension in South Asia here. Pakistan and India, they fought war in Pakistan and Afghanistan. They got involved in military confrontation. There's a war in Middle East. Then we are seeing a war in Eastern Europe between Russia and Ukraine. Then USA conducted some military strikes on Iran, right? So in 2025, we saw a revival of realism, and most of the world leaders, they adopted realist policy. They increased their nuclear weapons. So yes, to some extent, this this belief of new realist scholars that only power maximization and nuclear deterrence, it can ensure survival and peace, it to some extent it holds good even today, even in this era of new liberalism. Well, now let's study how new liberals believe that survival can be ensured in the world. Well, they say that complex interdependence, regime theory, economic prosperity of peace loving people, all these things, they can ensure survival and peace in the world. Immanuel Kant said Unhindered commerce would unite people in a common peaceful enterprise, and trade would increase the wealth and power of peace-loving, productive sections of the population at the expense of the war-oriented aristocracy. Students, these new liberal scholars believe that complex interdependence and liberal institutionalism are the two ways to promote peace and survival and ensure survival in the world. And students, if we talk about today's situation, this is the neoliberalism is the way towards peace. Uh, the scholars can analyze the international relations in any way. Scholars can say that yes, there is power maximization, nuclear deterrence, and mistrust between states. But as policy makers, those who make policies, they should always think positively, and it is their duty to not think negatively and to not promote tensions and military confrontation in the world. Because if we think from individual level, if we think about citizens and common people, we should always think positively, and we should always think in the for the benefit and in favor of the common people, right? Because at the end of the day, it is the common people who make the nations. So we should always promote new liberalism. If someone asks you that how do you see the future or what policies should be promoted, you should always reply that there should be revival of new liberalism, and new liberalism should always promote, because the the welfare of people lies in new liberalism only. All right, so there should always be complex interdependence, and policy makers and the leaders of the world should always promote peace and should always promote cooperation, because this is the only way to salvation of humans and world peace, right? So here this lecture ends, and I hope that all the listeners now understand new debate. This was a very simple kind of topic, very interesting, but I have tried my level best to explain this. I've added many examples also, and the main purpose of including so many real life examples in my lectures is so that all the students, the beginners especially, they understand that how they can apply this on the real life international relations, right? So in the next lecture, inshallah, I would try to explain the constructive theory or the critical theory. Uh, for today, that's all. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.